The holiday season of 2025 was shattered by shocking news that rippled across continents, interrupting celebrations and leaving millions glued to their screens in disbelief. Headlines everywhere reported a stunning development. A U.S. military airstrike had struck the quiet town of Jabo, Nigeria, a place few outside the region had ever heard of before. On December 26, American forces launched a targeted attack in this small, unstable community, far from their usual theaters of operation. The mission was executed swiftly, catching both local residents and international observers off guard. The strike was a unilateral move, ordered directly by the White House, bypassing traditional alliances and diplomatic channels. No prior warning was given to allies or the Nigerian government, raising immediate questions about the motives behind such a bold decision. For Jabo's residents, the sudden violence was a terrifying intrusion into daily life. Families scrambled for safety as explosions shattered the night, and the sense of security in their remote village was lost in an instant. The world was left asking, why Nigeria? Why now? The timing just after Christmas only deepened the sense of shock and confusion. The operation's secrecy and lack of prior discussion fueled speculation about its true purpose and the identity of its target. Analysts and journalists scrambled to piece together clues, but official statements remained vague. This bold action marked a dramatic shift in U.S. policy toward Africa, signaling a new willingness to intervene directly in regional affairs, regardless of international opinion or precedent. As dawn broke over Jabo, confusion and fear gripped the community, while international observers scrambled for answers. The village, once peaceful, was now at the center of a global crisis. Aid organizations and local authorities rushed to assess the damage and casualties as the political fallout began to unfold. Humanitarian concerns quickly became entangled with diplomatic tensions. The full story of what happened in Jabo, and why, was only just beginning to emerge, promising to reshape the conversation about security, sovereignty, and the future of U.S.-Africa relations. The airstrike was personally authorized by President Donald Trump, who announced the operation via social media. He framed the strike as a necessary act to protect global security and American interests, citing credible intelligence of a significant threat in Jabo. Trump's message was clear. The U.S. would act decisively against terrorism wherever it appeared. His direct approach left little room for diplomatic nuance, presenting the strike as a moral imperative. Supporters praised his boldness while critics warned of the risks of bypassing established protocols and international norms. Foreign policy experts questioned the lack of consultation and the potential for unintended consequences. The decision to strike a sovereign nation without warning raised concerns about escalating tensions and undermining diplomatic relations. Trump's confident declaration set off a heated debate about the proper use of executive power in matters of war. The world braced for the fallout from this unprecedented move. President Trump justified the strike on two fronts, targeting ISIS terrorist scum and protecting Christians in Nigeria. By linking the militants to ISIS, he cast the operation as part of the global war on terror, making it relatable to Americans. He also positioned himself as a defender of persecuted Christians, appealing to his evangelical base. Critics, however, argued this narrative oversimplified Nigeria's complex conflict and risked inflaming religious tensions. Security analysts noted that violence in Nigeria affects both Christians and Muslims, and that the militant landscape is fractured, not solely ISIS. Labeling the target as ISIS may have been a strategic simplification, masking the true nature of the group. The lack of specificity raised questions about the quality of intelligence and the administration's understanding of local dynamics. The justification quickly became a flashpoint for controversy at home and abroad. The Nigerian government's response was cautious and measured, reflecting the complexity of the situation they suddenly faced. Officials were quick to gather and assess the implications of the U.S. strike, knowing that every word and action would be closely scrutinized, both at home and abroad. While some officials privately welcomed U.S. support against militants, the unilateral nature of the strike raised serious concerns about sovereignty. There was a sense of unease about foreign military action taking place on Nigerian soil without prior consultation, even if the target was a common enemy. Public statements acknowledged the shared threat of terrorism, but subtly reasserted Nigeria's right to control its own security. Officials emphasized that Nigeria remained committed to fighting extremism, but insisted that any international cooperation must respect the nation's autonomy and decision-making processes. Behind closed doors, urgent discussions with Washington sought clarity. Was this a one-off, or the start of deeper U.S. involvement? Nigerian diplomats pressed their American counterparts for assurances, wary of setting a precedent that could undermine their authority in the region. The prospect of expanded American action brought both hope for more resources and fear of losing legitimacy. Some saw an opportunity to strengthen the fight against insurgents, while others worried about the message it sent to the Nigerian public and military. For the Nigerian military, the strike was a double-edged sword, potentially helpful, but also a sign of doubt in their capabilities. Officers debated whether this intervention would boost morale or undermine confidence in their own operations. The government faced the challenge of balancing the benefits of U.S. assistance with the political risks of foreign intervention. Leaders had to consider public opinion, regional stability, and the long-term impact on Nigeria's sovereignty. Their careful public reaction reflected this delicate balancing act. Every statement was weighed to avoid appearing weak, yet not to alienate a powerful ally. The strike forced Nigeria to navigate a new reality, with American power now directly in play. The government understood that the world was watching, and that their next steps would set the tone for future cooperation, or confrontation. The world watched to see how Abuja would respond to this unprecedented intrusion, as Nigeria weighed its options in a rapidly shifting geopolitical landscape. Nigeria's conflict is rooted in decades of violence, with groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP waging brutal insurgencies. Boko Haram's campaign of terror has devastated communities, while splinter groups like ISWAP have added new layers of complexity. These factions compete for territory and influence, making the situation dangerously unpredictable. The violence is fueled by ethnic rivalries, land disputes, poverty, and government corruption, issues militants exploit to gain support. Any military solution must address these root causes, or risk perpetuating the cycle of violence. The U.S. airstrike in Jabo was not an isolated event, but an intervention in a tangled web of conflict. The lines between armed groups are blurred, and motivations range from ideology to criminal enterprise. Understanding this history is crucial to assessing the impact and risks of foreign intervention. President Trump's focus on protecting Christians highlighted real suffering, but the reality is far more complex. Extremist violence in Nigeria has targeted both Christians and Muslims, with militants attacking anyone who opposes their ideology. Mosques and Muslim communities have suffered devastating attacks, often for resisting militant control. The conflict is not a simple religious war, but a battle between extremists and all who reject their rule. By framing the strike as a defense of Christians alone, Trump risked deepening divisions in an already fractured society. The true victims are united in their suffering, regardless of faith. A nuanced understanding is essential to avoid fueling further conflict. Experts quickly warned that U.S. intervention risked misunderstanding Nigeria's complex conflict. The region is a patchwork of armed groups, criminal gangs, and local grievances, not a simple fight against ISIS. Airstrikes can create power vacuums, trigger violent rivalries, and risk civilian casualties, fueling resentment and recruitment for extremists. There's also the danger of mission creep, one strike leading to deeper, costlier involvement. Past interventions have shown that military force alone rarely solves such crises. Sustainable peace requires diplomacy, development, and addressing root causes like poverty and injustice. The U.S. strike, while bold, lacked a clear long-term strategy for lasting stability. In Jabo's aftermath, chaos reigned as Nigerian police anti-bomb squads secured the site. Their presence signaled the seriousness of the target as they searched for explosives and gathered evidence. The strike's precision was evident, but nearby buildings were damaged and smoke filled the air. Authorities quickly locked down the area, limiting information and access. The human toll was unclear, with officials slow to release casualty figures and aid workers struggling to account for residents. For Jabo's people, the strike brought fear and uncertainty, transforming their town into a militarized zone. Daily life was upended as the community grappled with trauma and questions about why they were targeted. The event left Jabo in shock, its future uncertain in the wake of international intervention. The Jabo airstrike has thrust U.S. policy in Africa into uncharted territory, raising urgent questions about America's role and responsibilities on the continent. The world is watching closely as the U.S. navigates this complex and rapidly evolving situation. Is this a one-time action, or the start of a broader campaign that could reshape the region's security landscape for years to come? The uncertainty is fueling debate both in Washington and across Africa. What are the true goals of this intervention, and how will success be measured in such a challenging environment? Will it be defined by military victories, or by long-term stability and improved lives for ordinary Nigerians? Without a clear, transparent strategy, both allies and adversaries are left guessing about America's intentions, which could lead to miscalculations or unintended consequences on the ground. While U.S. power could help weaken extremist groups, it also risks escalating violence, deepening local resentments, and making Nigeria a new front in the global war on terror, potentially drawing in more actors and complicating the conflict. Diplomatic fallout is inevitable, as Nigeria must balance the urgent need for outside help with the imperative of protecting its sovereignty and national pride. Future U.S. actions must be closely coordinated with Nigerian authorities, respecting local leadership and priorities to avoid backlash and a surge in anti-American sentiment that could undermine cooperation. Heavy-handed intervention could ultimately weaken the very government the U.S. seeks to support, fueling instability and distrust among the population. Building a true partnership, one based on mutual respect, shared goals, and local empowerment, is essential for any hope of lasting peace and progress in the region. The Jabo strike is a stark reminder that military force alone cannot resolve deep-rooted conflicts. Sustainable solutions require addressing the underlying causes of violence and instability. The world now waits to see if this bold move will bring real progress to Nigeria, or become a cautionary tale of unintended consequences and missed opportunities.